Welcome back to SicEm365 Radio. This segment with former Baylor defensive coordinator Phil Bennett is sponsored by the Nitchie Group Insurance Company, where clients are more than just a policy number. See why thousands of Texans trust the Nitchie Group with their home, auto benefits, and commercial insurance coverage. Call their Waco office to speak with an expert at 254-420-3900 or visit them online at tngins.com.
Daniels 7 yards deep in his own end zone, and he's going to be sacked, and that'll be 2 points for the Bears. Terrell Bernard.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
5 o'clock hour is Phil Bennett here in just a second. And then played for Phil Bennett and Avion Edwards, the former Stephenville running back, and then became a heck of a linebacker at Baylor as well. Phil Bennett joins Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak on SicEm365 Radio. Let's start with him. I sent you a text yesterday. Help me get in touch with him. He's going to join us at 5:30. He was a tremendous running back in high school, but a lot of times you take those running backs, right, Phil, and you turn them into somebody on defense.
Well, no question. As I told you in the text, Avion was a punishing running back. And Art had known him growing up. He said, take a look at this kid. And I'll never forget, I went to Stephenville. I met him. And I told him, I said, hey, we're recruiting you as a linebacker. He said, Coach, I can do that. He hadn't played a lot, but he did. He became one of our really good ones.
How often does that happen where you tell a player, though, we'd like you to play linebacker, and they say, well, but I've always been a running back?
Well, it happens. I mean, to be truthful with you, and you know, I'm not so sure that Avion at some schools that used power back couldn't have played running back. I mean, he ran 4.5. He was a guy that he took care of his body. We just saw him as a guy. I did, and I know Jim Gush did also, as saying, he's smart, he's physical, and at that point. We had Eddie Lackey, we had Bryce, and so we had some guys that we could play, and we thought we had time to get him, on schedule, which Jim did a really good job of doing.
Coach, how did that the process of a guy potentially moving sides of the football, how did that typically work? Like, what did you need to see, or what did Art maybe see in a guy during practices where that conversation sort of begins, and how does that process go?
Well, first of all, when you think of a linebacker, you need somebody that's physical, and Avion certainly was that. I like the fact he was a smart guy. As you're seeing today in the SEC, they're getting a taste of this Big 12 offenses. You got to be smart. You got to get lined up. He could run. He knew angles. He was athletic. He had all the things. The only thing he didn't have is a ton of experience. But, he was a guy that adapted very quickly.
Phil, what's happened to what teams have already been able to do to solve Mike Leach after that first game against LSU, and now they can't seem to score?
Well, I watched every snap of that game, and, they're not very talented. Number one, their quarterback position, I'm sure he's going to have to make a switch this week. LSU was a unique deal. They went in and they played straight man, and Mike took advantage of it. It was almost, people forget their quarterback, and I hate to blame him because I know, but he had 4 turnovers in that LSU game. And I think he's got 12 for the season now. But, his line is young. His running back, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I think he's fixing to opt out. He didn't play on Saturday. I'm not so sure if he would have played his freshman quarterback, that game would have come down to the very wire.
Phil, Baylor's about to play a game in which they didn't practice for about 2 weeks beforehand. This situation is unprecedented. How do you maximize practice getting ready for Texas, who could practice the whole time that you couldn't?
Well, I think all the coaches know this. Number one is simplicity. You keep your package simple. That doesn't mean you don't attack what they do, but you want the kids to play fast. And to play fast, you've got to really know what you're doing. And I would think they would take some things into the game that they really feel good about, rep the dickens out of it while they can. And, physically, I'm sure there's a concern there. I mean, the West Virginia game was, 2 weeks ago? And you were already getting ready to prep for Oklahoma State. So it's not a great situation by any means, especially. But also, you're playing a team that you're probably as good at. So that's a good thing.
What's your favorite memory of playing against Texas, Coach?
I think my favorite memory, it's a great memory and a disappointing memory. We went, we had beat TCU the week before in 2013. If you remember, that's when Gary went on his rage about number 6 and, really did all that little show. And we had to start our freshman, our other midway guy at safety. Ahmad couldn't play, and it was cold as a dickens. We were closing out, the stadium, and, we really didn't know what was happening. Oklahoma State and Oklahoma were playing, and we get to the stadium, and Oklahoma had won the game, had upset them. And so whoever won the game was going to be the Big 12 champion. They had Malcolm Brown, and we went in there and we played. And I think at halftime, Dave, I think it was 6-3.
Mm-hmm.
We were ahead, and we had really played good defense. And my most disappointing thing is we intercept the pass. KJ Morton intercepts the pass, runs it into the end zone. It's a great play off of the screen for a touchdown. It would have been the last touchdown ever scored in Floyd Casey. And a guy who is now my neighbor in College Station called him for something unsportsmanlike because he danced in. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And that burned me up. I tell you, when I see him jogging, I almost pull over and slap him every day.
By the way, it was 3-3. That game was actually 3-3 at halftime. That was
okay.
Okay. But, yeah, KJ Morton, he and Joe Williams, didn't they play well against Texas during that stretch?
Yes, they did. They did. And I'm going to tell you something. It was a game that was also gratifying in the fact that I had to move Eddie Lackey to Mike linebacker. Bryce was hurt. Bryce got hurt. And Brody Trahan comes in, who had played a lot, at will. And they had, the back's still playing. Brown is, you saw him yesterday. He's a good football player. And they had some good receivers. And Meach and Joe and KJ had a great game, and we schooled them. And the week before, people forget this. They beat A&M. It's how crazy it was. They had beat somebody before, so it was a big win for us.
Was the 2012 game was where you guys felt you kind of got a little robbed by the officials, right, in Austin?
Well, the 2012 game was we went through that spurt, and you have to live it. I'm not going to make excuses. We got people hurt against Sam Houston. We lost Mike Hicks. We lost 4 different guys, and we had a spurt there. We weren't very good. We weren't even good enough to compete on defense, and I didn't do a good job of getting them in the right thing. And then one of the things on that Texas game, Ash, that was the only game that he had played, and we got 2 interferences that were terrible, but also we got 2 touchdowns called back, and we lost in a score fest. And then, of course, in 14, it was a great game because they scored, I think, the last play of the game. It would have been the first shutout since 1951 in Memorial Stadium.
Well, and then last year, remember, wasn't it, Craig, that Baylor had basically Texas dead to rights, and they had to call timeout at the end of the game to get on the board?
Yeah. Yep, Tom Herman got that touchdown there at the end.
Yeah.
Coach, I had to imagine that you were watching Ole Miss Arkansas with all of the people involved, Clements and Levy and Kendall. Arkansas gets the win, 33-21. What were your thoughts on that contest?
Well, I'm going to tell you a funny story. R.C. Slocum called me on Saturday. He goes, "Hey, I'm on the playoff committee." He goes, "I get all these games." He said, "Come over Monday. Let's watch games." I've been over at his house all day watching games. He gets every game, and our final game was we watched the Arkansas Auburn game, and then we watched the Ole Miss Alabama game, and then our final game was the Arkansas Ole Miss game. 7 turnovers, you're not going to win, and I thought that it was a great game. Obviously, Arkansas is much better than Ole Miss on defense. And I thought that, Kendall, Art had told me this last week. He said he had told Kendall, he said, "Don't worry about stats, just help your team." And I thought Kendall really called a disciplined game. He knew that they were playing great defense. He didn't take a lot of risks that he normally might have. And I thought Jeff and Clem did a great job because they went up and down the field. They just couldn't get in the end zone. And like I said, unfortunately, they had some, I think 2 4th down. Arkansas had 2 4th down stops on the 1 yard line. So it was a much better game than I didn't watch it personally, but I'm watching it on the tape. It was a heck of a game.
Sam Pittman was kind of an out of the box hire for Arkansas. Have you ever run across him at all? And your thoughts on him?
I worked with Sam on the staff. We were together at Oklahoma. I know Sam well. Yeah, and played against him when he was at North Carolina. I was at Pitt. We played in the Carolina Bowl. I know Sam well. You know what he is? He's a throwback. He's a tough line coach. He loves football. He's a great recruiter. He hired some good coordinators, Barry Odom and Kendall. He's got a good staff. He's letting them coach. And I'm telling you that they're a team. A&M's got an open date. I think Arkansas's got an open date. That could be a really good game in a couple weeks here in College Station.
Do you see A&M now with some of the players they need to play at a more consistent level on defense?
I'm going to tell you, the Mississippi State game was not a game it was a game I would have been extremely disappointed if they wouldn't have played really well against it. When the other quarterback came in, it concerned me. He was 15-18. And if Leach would have played him earlier, I'm not sure they'd have beat him. Now, they played good early. They mirrored Kentucky's they dropped 8 and they rushed 3. I watch Alabama, I watch Georgia, and it's 2 different speeds. Mm-hmm. I mean, I haven't even LSU. I see 2 teams in the SEC that stick out, and it was the 2 that played Saturday. I think A&M schedule. I think they could win every game out, or they could possibly lose, just depending. The second half they didn't throw the ball much, but as long as they run the ball and help their defense, I think their secondary is suspect, and if they can run the ball, I think it will help them immensely.
Coach, I wanted to ask you this last week and just ran out of time, and we don't have a newer, more recent game to really go off of, but that LSU defense, of interest, obviously, because Dave Aranda ran that show for the longest time, and now Bo Pelini is. Would have been interesting to see them against Florida if that weren't canceled, but just on the surface, when you're watching LSU or when you have watched LSU, what are the major differences, if any, you've been able to pick up on from what Pelini asked those guys to do versus what Aranda asked those guys to do, and why there's that little bit of a process right now for the Tigers to try to get that defense right?
Well, number one, I think they lost some really good players.
Right.
They had some guys opt out, and that's, of course, having players is big. But I think that, they went to a 4-man front instead of a 3-4. I don't think they're quite as athletic as when Dave was there. I think, too, quite honestly, Bo has been a head coach. He hadn't been calling defenses. I thought Dave had a better grasp of what's happening at this game. when Bo called defenses the last time they won it, and whatever year that was, 2005, the game's changed. And it's obvious they're struggling in the secondary. And you can't play just man coverage. You've got to be diverse, and you've got to be and Bo really doesn't have a background in the secondary, where I thought Dave does, and I think that's hurt him, quite honestly.
Phil, with Baylor now back, and they started working out yesterday, and they have their workouts this week. They're pretty good on defense again. They had a few players out, but they're pretty good on defense. And we don't know who's going to play, but it sounds like they're going to be in pretty good shape. Is it easier for the defense to get back into a rhythm after this break, or the offense?
I would say defense. I would agree with you. You know, the timing. You know, my concern is the fact that the two games that Baylor has played, we played, is you've had a mix and match on the offensive line, and it's harder with the timing to get things down, and getting the offensive timing is a little bit different than getting lined up on defense and just, you know, cutting loose. Like I said, I thought in the West Virginia game, for the most part, defensively, and, you know, I thought we really played fast. We played hard. Now, I know with Sam Ehlinger, you're going to get more quarterback run game, and they're going to be fired up. I mean, Baylor should know. I mean, they are going. This is a game. They're going in with someone who's pinned right now, and they need to get out. So Baylor better be ready to take the Longhorns, you know, best shot.
You have been in a season where things got fragile, and I'm not trying to reflect back on it too much, but obviously 2016 fell apart when you lost the game in Austin after that, and so many things behind it. What is it like when a locker room, because of off-the-field distractions, starts to maybe break up the actual unity in a team?
Well, you and I both know that the mind is a powerful thing, but at the same time, distraction takes you a focus away. And to be really good at anything, you got to have a strong focus. I can remember the nightmare of the Wall Street Journal article.
Yep.
That Friday, we were all called into a meeting, and the disarray, and the kids and their parents calling them about it, and just everything that went down. But also, I know this, as a leader and a coach, these kids will follow what we're doing. And I think that if you just stay the course, and listen, I didn't ever think our kids ever quit. I didn't think our coaches quit. We had a short distraction, and I will forever remember the sickness of losing that game over there after we had made a crucial fumble. But also, I think, you know, you can take that and you can grow from it, use it. And I think that that's what you have to do in those moments.
Anything else, Craig? Paul? Phil, thank you, man. We appreciate it. Can't wait to see what happens. Baylor and Texas. You're right. They're going to get the Longhorns' backs are against the wall, and really Baylor's against the wall because of the fact they haven't played in so long.
I think it's going to be a fun game. I think that when you look at it, Smoak, you know, both teams, like you said, both teams need to get this thing going, and I think you're going to see some fireworks. And I expect, you know, Charlie will play well too. I just feel it.
Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Thank you. Every Monday at 5 o'clock, our Daily Bears, by the way, reached out. He goes, oh, that sounds worth listening to. Every Monday at 5.